Right, so I got a question that I quite like the idea of doing a video on. Well, not a question, but people are starting to get their head around how it's very unlikely once you've trained for a duration of time to gain muscle while in a calorie deficit, okay? But the question was, how can I maintain as much muscle mass as possible while dropping body fat? Now, obviously, muscle loss is inevitable at some point during a calorie deficit and when you're cutting for a period of time. But what I've done here is I've actually done a graph to try and explain more in depth how important it is not to go too deep into a calorie deficit and how you can manipulate this and the amount of a deficit that you're in to try and keep and preserve as much muscle mass as possible. So if you look at the graph here, basically along the left side you've got the rate of risk of muscle loss, essentially, okay? Now, along the bottom of the graph, you've got how much of a calorie deficit an individual is in. So from 100 to 1,000 calories of a deficit, okay? This is probably the most common. If you're going higher than that, you're just an idiot, to be quite honest. Right, the red line basically shows the linear sort of progression, as in as the deficit that someone is in increases, as in goes higher up the scale, the risk of muscle loss greatly increases. So if you can imagine, an individual, a 200-pound individual, he's the same and he chooses loads of different routes. 100 cal deficit, 200 cal, blah, 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 all the way up to 1,000. As his deficit increases, okay, if he was stupid and he went on week 1 for that 1,000 calorie deficit, the risk of muscle loss greatly increases. Now, what I've done here is I've marked off the top end of the scale. So if he was on about 1,000 cals into a deficit, the risk of muscle loss is pretty much at its peak point. And before you know it, all of the months that he's worked very hard in the gym, building his chest, his arms, or if it was a female, those glutes that you've trained for months and months trying to build, they're gonna go because the rate of muscle loss is at its highest and it's at its highest risk. However, when we program nutrition and fat loss diets, as in giving people calories to hit, deficit calories and macros, we will try and keep it as optimal as possible in the 400 to 500 calorie mark. Now, this part here, if you go up, yes, there is a slight risk of muscle loss, but it's still quite low. It's almost still at zero. So we are minimizing the damage that you are going to do to your physique and minimizing all the hard work and losing it that you put in the gym months and months of being in a surplus and basically trying to grow the muscles that you wanted to grow, your glutes, your chest, your arms, whatever that is. So from here, you can see that red line is still pretty damn low. So it's not going to be that detrimental when it comes to you in 12 weeks being shredded, and you'll still have the muscles that you've worked so hard and they will be on show, okay? Now, a few tips that I've put here are, the first one, staying and hitting your protein goal is essential to minimize the risk of muscle loss, okay? Being in between the range of 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight will normally pretty much keep you safe and keep you on track. And yeah, you should be pretty much fine with that. That is your protein goal pretty much covered. And if you've actually got a macronutrient goal, you should be in that sort of range of protein, okay? The second one, and the most important one, why people believe that as soon as you are in a calorie deficit, that you suddenly have to do every single exercise at 20 reps is beyond me. Because there are a huge list of benefits that I could rattle off with strength training for fat loss anyway, but I'm not going to do that. That could be a separate video on its own. However, strength training and lifting heavy, if you can try and maintain strength through a cut, through a fat loss period, the risk of muscle loss will be minimal, okay? So train hard, maintain your strength, and you can guarantee that your physique will try and hold on to all of your hard-earned muscle, okay? The last one, and this is a bit of a gray area, but weight loss rate, okay? People get these crazy, especially even in my personal group, people are knocking themselves and thinking, oh, someone's lost 10 pounds, why have I not lost 10 pounds? it doesn't matter, it is all relative, okay? So the weight loss rate that you should be getting is 0.6 to 1.1% per week, okay? So, for example, say I'm sitting at 230 pounds right now. Now, 1% for me would be 2.3 pounds per week. Now, 2.3 pounds per week is the absolute most that I should be really losing per week, okay? Because I can hope that the majority of this is fat loss and a very minimal amount of it is muscle loss. Anything higher than this, if I'm losing 4 pounds a week, 5 pounds a week for 10 weeks in a row, you can guarantee that I'm going to be losing a lot of muscle, okay? Which is not what I want, because before you know it, I'll be as thin as that fucking iPhone cable. Anyway, point being, when you start a cut, you can obviously lose a lot of weight very quickly, but quite a lot of this is water weight. Quite a lot of it is the water retention and just getting your sodium levels back on track, because most people are starting to eat a lot healthier foods, controlling what they're putting in the body, okay? So your weight loss rate per week, if it's a 150 pound woman, okay, they should probably be losing at most 1.5 pounds per week. And you can hope that the majority of that is fat and not muscle. So those are a few pointers of mine. You've seen the table to try and prove my point. This is not scientifically based, but you get the idea, because there is science behind the perfect amount for a calorie deficit and muscle wastage. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like, give it a share, give it a thumbs up. And that is how to maintain as much muscle mass as possible while on a calorie deficit.